Parenting certainly is a job that has rewards and it has difficulties. And then all of a sudden, we're sending those kids off into the real world. I had this experience 2 years ago, sending my first daughter to college, and we are going to do it again next year with our second daughter. It's when you start to question, have I taught them all of the right things? Well, today I'm talking to Jill and Dave Henry, the authors of The Greatest College Health Guide You Never Knew You Needed. Hi, good to see both of you.
Hi, good morning.
Well, I love this book. I love what you've done. And I think it kind of smacked me and my husband in the face when we sent our oldest. You stop and you say, oh, wait, I had 18 years. Did I teach them all the right things? So tell me how you came up with the idea for your book and then what's in it.
Sure. So it was motivated by our work with high school students. We actually met coaching sports. I'm a high school cross country coach and also a math teacher. Dave started coaching football at the same school. And so our relationship actually blossomed on a high school campus in a super awkward but endearing sort of way. In cross country, a lot of the girls who run for me, when the season is over, are facing the absence of sports for the rest of their lives. Often they don't run in the spring, and so sports for them are over unless they're lucky enough to be competing in something in college, which most aren't. So 4 years ago at this point, at the last race of the season, I had a runner come up to me with tears in her eyes and ask me, how do I not gain the freshman 15? And it was the beginning of her recognizing that now all of the healthy choices that had been put in place for her just by having a sport, so exercise being required and eating well and sleeping well being expected, those were all on her now. And so dealing with that responsibility was really overwhelming for her. She wasn't making a joke about the freshman 15 as much as she was beginning to reconcile that now the responsibility of taking care of herself was hers for the rest of her life. Yeah. And so I responded by being, of course I'll help and we'll put something together. And that blossomed into a book. We never necessarily imagined that it would become what it is today. We thought initially it would be mostly about food and exercise, but recognized very quickly that focusing just on the physical manifestations of health was really doing a disservice to these kids. And so expanded it to all the topics we felt like the kids we worked with should know about as they prepare for that transition from high school to college.
So I love in the book that you did a survey. You asked kids around the country at all kinds of different schools. And Dave, tell me about this, what their struggles were and what they were surprised by when they got to college. What were some of those things?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so when we started on this project, part of the void that's created when you grow up with 18 years of structure in your family's home, and then you're sent off to college, and now all of a sudden you've got to take care of yourself for the first time all by yourself, right? And I'm sure, as you can attest to, taking care of yourself is a lifelong learning. And so we see this enormous need at this time where you're set off, you're by yourself, and now there's a buffet style dining hall. There's nobody to tell you to go to sleep. There's alcohol available for maybe the first time in your life. And it's this situation where you just don't have any idea of how do I do all of these things by ourselves. So it was really important to us to incorporate as many voices as we could in this demographic from this peer group. And so we designed a survey with 2 psychologists to elicit certain responses that would be raw, that would be vulnerable, that would connect. And so we reached out to hundreds of students across the country, big schools, small schools, private, public, big Greek life scenes, completely dry religious campuses, just to find out from kids, what do you wish you had known when you had started? What were the things that you learned? Where were the places where you tripped up? And curated all of this advice into one place, not just as a, here's where you can read, 50 quotes from people, but as an entry point into a conversation, into this idea of how do you take care of yourself, right? How do you make sure that you're not partying too much? Or how do you make sure that you're seeing people and not just isolating in your room a lot? And getting that message from people who are your age has so much more power than being told by adults or parents or coaches, this is what you have to do. And if you're not doing it, you're doing something wrong. And what's happening there is this judgmental kind of approach, right? This idea that if you're not doing these things, you're doing it wrong. And that's completely the opposite way that we wanted to come at with this, which was a non-judgmental, we're all in this together. This is hard. Taking care of yourself is hard. And if we talk about that openly, then all of a sudden we're leaning into a conversation and we're wanting to read a little more. And, oh, I didn't know that about that. And it's that kind of engagement that didn't seem to be happening at this crucial juncture in all these kids' lives, right? Which is, I'm on my own. How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
So getting them to lean in first and foremost was the sole drive for how we approached the book.
Well, and I think parents who are listening will say, this is my child doesn't like to read. Well, some kids do. They don't like to read their assignments in high school. How am I going to get them to read a book about college? I mean, they know everything, right?
Right.
I mean, teenagers know everything. They know what they're doing. So
Sure.
to really lean in, like you're saying, and read and go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I didn't know that. I need to think about that. How do we get them to take it seriously and realize they don't know everything?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, like Dave was saying, we had a lot of quotes, but we also rooted it in story. That's the most interesting way that we've always found to get into topics. And so every chapter starts with, and throughout it, we're sharing stories about our own disastrous failures in college. And so just to try to bring some levity to health information, which oftentimes is readily available. You could Google the answers to any of the questions you have, but compiling it in such a way and framing it with real human experience to make it funny and entertaining and interesting, so that you weren't just getting a bundle of facts, but that it was really a story first and foremost.
Well, let's get into a couple of the specifics. So we talk about one of the big shocks when kids go to school, they leave the nest, is food. Like you said, there's a buffet. They go to the cafeteria every day. They can eat. That's why we talk about the freshman 15, right?
Yeah.
It's all just there. I remember having a favorite in college where I'm like, oh, I loved this cereal every day. And only later did I find out it was like the worst cereal, full of like just crap that I was eating every day because it was readily available to me.
Right.
Like give me a couple of the examples that you found, or the survey, or things that the kids can learn, or that parents can start teaching now before the freshman 15.
So one of the things, like you're talking about, is the access, which poses a problem if you don't know how to regulate. And that could be just in terms of making the right choices and portion control. And I hesitate to even say the right choices, because I think the message that we really tried to push in the book was that it's okay to indulge, and it's okay to have your cereal with chocolate milk, like I was doing in college, just because I could. It's just about doing that with some sort of making that a special thing and not the regular thing. And I think what we really tried to do in the book was lay out, we worked with a registered dietitian and laid out categories of, these are the foods you should eat every day, and these are the foods you should eat sometimes, and these are the foods you should eat rarely. It wasn't a prescription of, this is what you should eat, all the other stuff's bad. There had to be a rooting in some realism, because we have pizza Fridays in our house, and we still treat ourselves with, bad food when we're feeling super excited or super sad. I think that's a very human thing.
There's ice cream in the freezer.
Right, at all times. And so,
but
it was about
after dinner.
It was about recognizing that there are choices, and you have the freedom to make choices, and not all of your choices need to be the best choices. Yeah. And so I think a lot of kids in freshman year end up feeling really overwhelmed by the excess and either eating too much or eating the wrong things. We tried to highlight focusing on how you're feeling physically. We don't talk about weight. I think we mention weight gain in like the first sentence of the book. Not the first sentence, but early on in the book, and made a really concerted effort to never mention that again. We talked a lot about how you feel, and that being more important than how you look. Because what happened to me was...
I'm sorry, but that's something we can start to teach before they leave for college, with young children, that we start this process of everything in your book now. So you can say, how do you feel after you eat that? So when they leave, it's already something they understand.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a hard thing with so much. It's there's so much distraction in life for everybody that sometimes it's hard to take a step back and think about anything. How is food making me feel? Or how is the absence of exercise making me feel? How is, my stress level affecting my bottom line? So the big message throughout the entire book, which starts in food, but obviously goes throughout, is how do you feel physically, mentally, emotionally? And how can you make certain choices to make sure that you are in control of your feelings as much as possible? Yeah. Recognizing that at some point, even if you feel like you're making a lot of good decisions, you're going to feel terrible. That's very human as well. And preparing kids for that reality is something we really wanted to do.
And you talk about that reality. I had a conversation with my 20-year-old who is a rising junior in college about the book. And one thing that she told me that I thought was really good and very insightful was, Mom, I had to fail to realize what I had to learn.
Yeah.
And that's big. And that's a part of growing up, right? Like it means a lot more when you feel it versus someone told me I had to do this.
Right.
So I had to realize I do have to exercise every day, or I do have to eat better. But part of failing is then knowing how to deal with that, knowing how to deal with stress, knowing how to deal with failure. And I know you talk about that too, the stress element. And tell me what kind of tips you give for that age group, but it really could be used at any point. And you guys have worked with high schoolers in just teaching and helping our kids learn to deal with stress and failure.
Yeah. So first off, dealing with failure and what your daughter had to experience of like, I didn't know what I didn't know until I was there. That's a theme throughout our book, that you're not going to be able to prevent failing. Dealing with your health is not a pass-fail situation. It can't be black and white, because we would never get the opportunity to learn. So, well, now what do I do that I'm there, right? Now that I'm in this place where I feel terrible, what am I going to do about it? And so, as Jill mentioned, taking that first step of an assessment, what have I been doing recently? What did I have earlier? How much sleep did I get last night? When was the last time I exercised? Those are questions we don't really regularly ask ourselves. And that's something that we encourage parents and students to start doing. Okay, you feel bad. Why do you feel bad? Let's start the triage. Let's start this kind of symptomatic breakdown, right? I feel stressed. I feel overwhelmed. I've got a paper that's due tomorrow. I've been procrastinating, like, I'm in this place right now. Okay, well, how did we get there? And what can we do now? And it's so crazy to see the stress stats in college right now are pretty tremendous, right? That 98% of students feel stress. Well, that's normal because we're humans. We've got to deal with stress every single day. That's part of what we've got to do, right? But the National Health Assessment that we use to help do a lot of the breakdown in the book found that 88% of students felt that they felt tremendous stress at some point in time throughout the last year. And 60% of those students felt that they were overwhelmed just within the last 2 weeks, right? The number one source of stress for college students, you want to take a guess of what you think it might be?
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe the pressure of expectations.
I think that's probably an overarching theme of all the stresses.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually their schoolwork.
Well, sure.
It's not being able to get this done, right, in a certain amount of time. And now it's right up until the last second. What am I going to do about this?
Yeah. And what was interesting is the most recent National College Health Assessment gave light to that. And the reason that they're stressed is because of procrastinating. It was like 70% admitted that the source of their stress was just not doing the work. They had the time, they just weren't negotiating it or organizing it properly. And so, to get back to what Dave was saying, freedom, oddly enough, tends to be the thing that ends up being challenging for these kids. It's the thing they're most excited about when they go to college, but also the thing that they realize they're unprepared to navigate, is just the immense openness of their schedule. And how do you structure a day so that by the end of it, you feel like you've done what you needed to do and you took care of yourself. And so our stress chapter talks about academics and talks about finances and talks about relationships, because those are the three leading sources of stress for college students. So we talk about stress in general, but we also talk about it for more specific circumstances. How can you both get ahead of it? And then once you're there, which you will inevitably be, how do you start to course correct? And so it's a little bit bigger of a conversation than just, we do talk about anxiety and depression and some of the mental health issues that concern all of us. But we really wanted to focus specifically on, as a college student, where should you expect to encounter stress and how can you deal with it when you're there?
So there's a combination of how do you add structure to your life so that I know after dinner, I'm going to go with this one kid I met from my class, and we're going to go to the library together. We're going to hold each other accountable, and we're going to get this thing done, right? I mean, there's ways that you can add structure to making sure that you're staying on top of your things, whatever it is that you have to get done. But more importantly, how do I understand, what do I need in order to be able to take a step back and get away from this bubble that I live in order to give myself what I need? Is it going for a walk and listening to a podcast? Is it calling one of these 5 people who I've saved in my phone as friends and or cousins, family, mentors, former coaches, people who know and care about you and would be happy to get a phone call from you? How do you give yourself a break from that pressure, right? Because the pressure isn't going to go anywhere until you're finally done with the assignment. And then you're like, oh, okay, I got 2 more weeks before I'm going to put myself through the same grinder again, right? Yeah. So putting some of those productivity tips in place is part of it, but it's also understanding, what do you need as a human being in order to relieve that pressure that you're putting on yourself?
Yeah, I want to highlight something that you just said, because I remember someone giving me this advice that every kid at any level needs at least 5 people outside of their parents that they can call at any time. So we were listening to the same podcast or read the same book in whatever you just said. And I've thought of that many times with my kids' friends, where I've said, I want to be one of those 5 people. If you ever need to call me, no pressure, because at some point we have to look at our kids and say, are they able to ask for help?
Yeah.
Because they're going to get to a place where it is going to be stressful, or they're going to be in a dangerous situation and they're scared to be judged. Yeah. And we have to be sure that they know they can reach out. And so I don't know if that's something that you talk about, but I really emphasize being able to ask for help. Maybe it's from a teacher, maybe it's from a mentor, maybe it's from a coach, whatever it is, that I need help and I don't know where to go with school, with a relationship, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Yeah, we really tried to destigmatize that, of asking, that it's okay to ask for help and that you're not the only one struggling. The statistics in the book support the fact that everyone is having trouble with something. And maybe, Dave's struggles might be different than mine or yours, but everybody's struggling at some point in the college environment. And kids are led to believe there's this enduring narrative that this is the best 4 years of your life. I feel like everyone has heard that. And what's funny is that in the quotes we got back from kids, that puts a lot of pressure on them, oddly enough, because they're led to believe that if they're struggling, that that's not normal, that something's wrong with them because they're not making the most of it, and that it's, their fault that they're not having the best time ever. It was funny how many times we saw that echoed in our quotes, that pressure to make it fun and this lasting, enjoyable experience. And so the whole book really tried to bring the message across that it can be really fun, but it also is going to be hard, and that's okay. There's this Holmes-Ray stress inventory that I don't remember what year it was published, but it's essentially a cataloging of life's most traumatic events that, if you go through any of them, indicate a dip is coming in mental health. And 3 of the 43 items on there are things that you would experience going to college: change in living environment, change in school, and taking out a loan. So just from a bare bones standpoint, they're already set up to struggle outside of anything they have any control over. And so we, again, really tried to give airtime to the idea that it's hard, it's okay, it's not your fault, you haven't done anything wrong, and this is how you can get help when you need it.
Yeah, counseling center appointments have gone up 34% on college campuses just from 2010 to 2015. And on one hand, that's good. That's people who are reaching out and using resources and asking for help. But I do think it's also indicative of the times that we live in and the expectations that are put on these kids. A, for the reasons that we just talked about. B, everything, their lives being lived through social media, of it has to be this highlight reel of only the best, and all the time it must be the best, right? That kind of pressure that students feel And then they're walking around on these campuses that have gone through their own kind of explosion in amenity wars. It's like, we've got the pool over here and look at this big new building over there, you know?
So true. And they're choosing schools sometimes because of those amenities instead of really what they want to study. Isn't that, I hadn't thought about that. Very true.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling bad at that moment when you're walking around that campus and you're looking through your phone and you see all these people who are happy, that can be such an isolating thing, right? That like whatever it is that I'm feeling must not be being felt by all of these people who are, you know, only showing me the best parts of their lives. And so allowing for all aspects of open communication to be encouraged to these students. Start with a friend, start with somebody who's on your floor, start with anybody who's in your phone who you know you can call. That's a regular part. That's not just for emergencies only, right? That's got to be a regular part of your life that you understand. Okay, well, when I'm not feeling it, I got to do something to let this out.
Yeah. Boy, I can tell you're both teachers and coaches. I love your advice. You connect in such a great way with the needs of young people. Another thing that I might add, in all aspects of life at every stage, especially in college, but beyond too, is find your people. Like find that group. And for my oldest, it was her team because she plays collegiate sports. That's your family when you get there. You know, maybe it's a sorority. That's your family when you get there. But that isolation, and we've especially seen that during the pandemic, is dangerous in a way you don't think it's going to be. You think you're safe in your own room and you're good, but that starts to settle in. So find your group, find like-minded people that you can hang with and feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that can take effort, right?
Absolutely.
That you're lucky. I was lucky enough to, like your daughter, to play a sport where I got to college and I was on a team and I had an instant brotherhood of people, right? But for a lot of kids, they don't have a sport, or maybe they're scared by sororities or whatever it is, that it might take effort on your part to find a club or to find people who are your people, that might not just be built in, right?
But there are other people feeling the same way and lonely.
Exactly.
And knowing that finding a club, a group, whatever it is, that is like so important when you first get to college, or, you know, we're talking high school, middle school, we're talking life.
Sure.
You got to find those people that are like-minded.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I have two questions I like to ask of all of my guests, and you guys can choose who asks them at the end of the podcast. And I love these questions because I learn from people like you. So the first one is, what productivity tool do you find the most helpful? And it doesn't have to be a physical tool. It can just be anything.
So the flow state is, I'm sure, something that you guys have had discussions on this podcast, and maybe not yet, but it's essentially you're finding this optimal experience where nothing else seems to matter, right? If you've ever been doing something and then you looked up and you're like, oh my God, 3 hours went by, right? You were in a flow state. Okay. Well, that's essentially a hack for being the most productive you could ever be in your life, right? In that kind of moment. I can't turn that on and off. And so for me, I have to set the stage. I have to build the environment. I have to gather the goods. And if you have to write a paper, or, you know, for me, if I have to cut a scene, I need to not only know what is this about, what are the emotions that are involved in this. I've got to go through all the footage and find every single piece that I can use to help fortify that. And then I've got to make sure that all of these things are available for me. And then I start a timer on my phone, and I'm not allowed to do anything else. But now that I have all the goods, I can just get right to it. And I'm not going to do anything until that timer goes off. And that could be 20 minutes. That could be 45 minutes. It's up to you to decide how long. But if you treat it like a race, you don't just show up to a race and start running, right? You've got to like wake up and hydrate and eat something and get there and maybe stretch a little bit. Yeah. And then when that goes off, you know that it's time to do it because you've built up to that moment. So that's my hack for trying to get into the flow state, is knowing I can't just turn it on and off. I've got to like be ready for it. And then when it's time, commit to it. Nothing else, like no phone, no email, nothing. I'm going to just do this right now. Do
you recognize, Dave, this could be a whole podcast, and we haven't talked about that, but I love this, and I'm going to call it this because I was in this yesterday. I was like, I'm getting so much done. This feels so good. Yeah. And I've never called it or heard it called that flow state. But do you recognize when you're in it? Do you go, oh man, I'm in a good I'm in a good state right here. I'm getting a lot done. Then I'm going to set the timer. Like, do you
It's not until you just said that I'm getting a lot done, right? So in the process of building, of moving, of writing, whatever it is that you need to do, I'm not aware that like this is what's happening. It's only when like, well, that's done, moving on to the next one. You know what I mean? It's that little bit of feeling where you're like, I'm doing it today. Like Monday wasn't great. Today's a good day. You know,
this is good for college kids too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're talking about college, but I'm thinking of my high schooler and even my 11-year-old where it's,
sure.
I love this because the days that I don't have a lot of productivity, I'm like, I didn't get up at the same time. I didn't have a good breakfast. Maybe I didn't drink the water I was supposed to drink. So making sure that you are doing those things that add to that success.
Yeah.
And having that good. Great tool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So I'll let you guys decide who takes this one. This question is, when did you decide or know your purpose? And I think I like to ask this question because I've changed my purpose in my life several times. And I like that. It feels good to do that. But when did you discover what your purpose was?
So I think that this has always been inherent in who I am, but I don't think I recognized this until a month ago. Dave and I live in LA, and we are sort of those stereotypical LA, really into astrology, really into soul readings. And we do a lot of that stuff. And I did a soul reading a few weeks ago. And the person who was doing it for me said, there's a really goofy side of you, and you need to let it out, because when you let it out, everyone around you feeds off of that energy and is happier because of it. And I think as a mom and as an adult, a lot of the times I end up leaning into the side of myself that is organized and efficient and really likes to cross things off of my list. And I forget that there's this part of me that has always existed. That's like a 12-year-old boy, very goofy, with a childish sense of humor, who likes to play games and trash talk. And I love that side of myself, and I don't lean into it enough. And so I'm going to arrogantly take it on as my purpose, because that's the kind of person I want to be. And I think that it has always served me well in my role as a coach and as a teacher, is making people excited. And I know that I have the power to do that. And I love that side of myself. And so for me, it's more about, I want to take it on as my purpose, as a way to remind myself that I can always go to that place, that's always inside of me, to be a force of great positive energy and enthusiasm and encouragement, and that it is valuable for my family, and it's valuable for my runners and my students. And so that's what I'm deciding my purpose is going to be for the rest of my life. I think it's always been there, but I'm making the choice more recently to lean into that more and allow myself to be in that space and not so constricted by the adult side of myself.
You know what I really love about this conversation, and I love your book, love what you all have done, but I feel like what you've written for college kids, really, it's like a really important, huge, probably one of the biggest steps people take in their life, but it applies to everybody. Right. It's like, we have to remember these things. It just so happens that that big step you take in college is the reminder we give ourselves. Right. But what you just said applies to college kids, but it applies to me at my stage of life. It applies to my younger one. Like, everything you've gone through in this book applies to everybody. It applies to, the things we have to remind ourselves of how we structure our day, our stress, our sleep, our eating, our drinking, or all of that.
Totally.
So where can people get more information on you and your book and what you all are doing?
Great. So our website is greatestcollegehealthguide.com. The book's available at all major book retailers. It actually just launched yesterday, so this has been a really exciting week for us. But more information about us and about the book is on there, as well as some testimonials from people who have read it, so you can get a sense of the tone and the content. There's some sample chapters for anybody who's interested in taking a read before they commit. All of that's on the website.
Well, I love it. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.